Shalom, my friend. Have you ever wondered why your prayers for abundance seem to bounce off the ceiling? Why opportunities slip through your fingers like water? Why every financial breakthrough gets sabotaged by some mysterious force you cannot identify? I'm going to tell you something that will disturb you, confront you, and potentially transform everything you believe about wealth, blessing, and divine provision. The reason heaven is withholding abundance from your life is not because God is testing your patience. It's not because you haven't suffered enough or prayed hard enough or given enough. Heaven is delaying your inheritance because your identity is emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually married to lack. You are praying for abundance while protecting scarcity. You are begging for breakthrough while clutching the very mindset that guarantees your limitation. God will not fund a fantasy. He will not pour blessing into a vessel that is internally loyal to survival mode, victim consciousness, or the comfort of familiar struggle. This is Rabbi Shimon, your Torah life architect, and today we're going surgical on the most dangerous delusion plaguing the human soul. The belief that you want abundance while your identity remains addicted to lack. If this confronts you, good. If this makes you uncomfortable, better. If this makes you angry, we're getting somewhere. Because transformation begins when we stop protecting our limitations with spiritual-sounding excuses and start facing the brutal truth about what we're actually choosing with our lives. Let me share with you a principle that will revolutionize how you understand divine provision. In Torah, identity always precedes inheritance. Always. God does not randomly distribute blessings to people who wish for them. He entrusts resources to identities that can handle them, steward them, and multiply them. Wealth does not enter a vessel that thinks like a slave, acts like a victim, or operates from fear. This is not some prosperity gospel nonsense. This is ancient wisdom that predates every modern self-help philosophy by thousands of years. The Torah teaches us that before God gives, He transforms. Before He promotes, He prepares. Before He blesses, He builds the character that can contain the blessing without being destroyed by it. Think about the children of Israel leaving Egypt. Physically, they were free. Moses led them out with signs, wonders, and miracles that shook the foundation of the known world. God parted seas, provided food from heaven, and gave them water from rocks. They had everything they needed to walk into their promised land and claim their inheritance. But something was wrong. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with their internal operating system. Despite witnessing miracle after miracle, despite being chosen and called and delivered by the very hand of God, they could not stop thinking like slaves. Their bodies were in the wilderness, but their minds were still in Egypt. Their circumstances had changed, but their identity remained trapped in survival mode. When they reached the border of the promised land and sent spies to scout the territory, 10 out of 12 came back with a report that revealed everything God needed to know about their internal condition. They saw themselves as grasshoppers facing giants. They focused on obstacles instead of opportunities. They remembered the fish and cucumbers of their slavery instead of embracing the milk and honey of their destiny. God didn't withhold the promised land from them out of cruelty. He delayed their inheritance because He knew that an identity addicted to limitation cannot steward abundance. He knew that people who see themselves as victims will turn every blessing into a burden, every opportunity into an obstacle, every gift into a guilt. So he let them wander in the wilderness until that generation died off and a new generation arose with an identity that matched their inheritance. God cannot promote an identity addicted to the past. This is not punishment. This is protection. Protection from the spiritual catastrophe that occurs when blessing meets an unprepared soul. Now let's bring this ancient wisdom into your modern life. How does loyalty to lack show up in your daily decisions, your emotional patterns, your financial behaviors? How are you unconsciously protecting the very identity that delays your blessing? It shows up when you make emotional purchases instead of strategic investments, when you buy things to feel better about your circumstances instead of building systems that change your circumstances. Emotional spending is identity protection. It's your soul's way of staying loyal to the story that you are powerless, that you need external things to fix internal problems, that your worth depends on what you can afford rather than who you are becoming. It shows up when you avoid responsibility and opportunity because deep down you're terrified of becoming someone new. You pray for abundance, but when opportunity knocks, you suddenly discover 1,000 reasons why now isn't the right time, why you're not ready, why someone else is more qualified. This isn't humility. This is identity protection. Your soul is protecting the familiar identity that knows how to struggle more than it trusts the unknown identity that knows how to thrive. It shows up when you romanticize your limitations and turn your struggles into your identity. When your story becomes, "I'm the one who never gets ahead," or "I'm the one who always has to work twice as hard for half as much," or "I'm the one who can't catch a break," you have made lack your brand. You have turned survival into your specialty, and heaven will not interrupt a story you are determined to keep telling. It shows up when you treat wealth as dangerous, when you secretly believe that money corrupts, that rich people are somehow spiritually compromised, that poverty is more pure than prosperity. This isn't righteousness. This is fear dressed up as virtue. If you believe that wealth is dangerous, why would God entrust it to you? If you believe that abundance is unspiritual, why would heaven open the floodgates of provision? It shows up when you blame your circumstances instead of changing your choices. When you point to the economy, your background, your education, your connections, your timing, your luck, or your karma as the reason you cannot access abundance. External circumstances are never the real barrier. Identity is the barrier. An identity aligned with abundance finds opportunity in every circumstance. An identity aligned with lack finds obstacles in every opportunity. Let me be clear about something. I'm not talking about positive thinking or manifestation or visualizing your way to wealth. I'm talking about identity transformation. I'm talking about the deep surgical work of examining who you are being on a daily basis and whether that person is capable of receiving and stewarding the abundance you claim to want. There are 3 identity barriers that consistently delay divine provision, and I want you to examine your life ruthlessly as we go through each one. Do not let yourself off the hook. Do not make excuses. Do not protect your limitations with spiritual-sounding justifications. The first barrier is the comfort of familiar struggle. Most people don't actually pursue wealth. They protect routines, excuses, and comfort zones that allow them to stay exactly where they are while complaining about where they are. Familiar struggle feels safer than unfamiliar success Because your identity knows how to navigate struggle. Your identity has mastered the art of getting by, making do, surviving another month, another year, another decade. But abundance requires an identity that knows how to thrive, not just survive. It requires someone who can make decisions from vision rather than fear, someone who can handle increased responsibility, increased visibility, increased complexity. Most people pray for abundance while doing everything in their power to maintain the simple, predictable life of limitation. You protect familiar struggle when you choose jobs that pay just enough to get by instead of pursuing opportunities that demand growth. You protect familiar struggle when you stay in relationships that enable your limitations instead of seeking connections that challenge your potential. You protect familiar struggle when you consume information that confirms your biases instead of learning skills that expand your capacity. The second barrier is the fear of becoming someone new. Abundance doesn't just change your bank account. It changes everything. It changes how you spend your time, how you make decisions, who you associate with, what you're responsible for, how people treat you, what's expected from you. Most people want the benefits of abundance without the transformation it requires. They want more money, but they don't want to become someone who can handle more money. They want better opportunities, but they don't want to become someone who creates better opportunities. They want increased provision, but they don't want increased responsibility. They want heaven to change their circumstances without heaven changing them. But God will not pour new wine into old wineskins. He will not entrust abundant resources to an identity that operates from scarcity programming. Wealth requires stewardship. Stewardship requires character. Character requires transformation. And transformation requires dying to who you were in order to become who you need to be. You fear becoming someone new when you resist learning skills that your future requires, when you avoid networking events, educational opportunities, or experiences that would stretch your capacity. You fear becoming someone new when you cling to old friendships that drain your energy instead of building relationships that inspire your potential. You fear becoming someone new when you make decisions based on who you've always been instead of who you're becoming. The third barrier is loyalty to emotional narratives. Your identity is built on stories. Stories about your past, your family, your struggles, your limitations, your wounds. These stories give you a sense of identity, belonging, and even purpose. But if your story is fundamentally about lack, limitation, or victimhood, heaven cannot write the next chapter until you're willing to let the old story die. Many people are more attached to their struggle than they are committed to their solution. They've built their entire sense of self around being the underdog, the survivor, the one who overcomes impossible odds. But here's the problem. If your identity depends on having impossible odds to overcome, you will unconsciously create impossible odds to maintain your identity. You're loyal to emotional narratives when you find yourself telling the same story about your limitations over and over again. When you bond with people through shared struggle instead of shared vision. When you feel more comfortable complaining about your problems than celebrating your progress. When you get more attention for your wounds than your wins. These narratives aren't just limiting your financial potential. They're programming your soul to expect lack, to prepare for disappointment, to brace for the next catastrophe. And a soul programmed for lack cannot receive abundance even when it's offered. Now I want to give you something practical, something you can implement immediately to begin shifting your identity from lack alignment to abundance alignment. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is surgery. This is the practical work of identity transformation. First, track your decisions, not your dollars. Every day, pay attention to the choices you make and ask yourself, is this choice coming from an identity of lack or an identity of abundance? An abundant identity chooses growth over comfort, investment over consumption, opportunity over security, future over past. Start making one abundance-aligned decision every day, even if it's small. Your decisions reprogram your identity faster than your circumstances can change it. Second, speak from your future identity, not your past wounds. Change your language. Instead of "I can't afford it," say, "I choose not to prioritize it right now." Instead of "I never get ahead," say, "I'm building momentum." Instead of "money doesn't grow on trees," say, "abundance flows to those who create value." Your words are programming your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is creating your reality. Third, replace survival habits with growth systems. Survival habits are reactive, short-term, and fear-based. Growth systems are proactive, long-term, and vision-based. Instead of living paycheck to paycheck, create a system for building wealth. Instead of reacting to opportunities, create a system for generating opportunities. Instead of hoping things get better, create systems that make things better. Fourth, stop protecting your limitations with justifications. Every time you catch yourself explaining why you can't, why it won't work, why you're not ready, why it's not fair, stop. Ask yourself, am I protecting a limitation or am I solving a problem? Abundance-aligned people solve problems. Lack-aligned people protect limitations. Fifth, seek environments that match your destiny, not your history. Your environment is programming your identity every moment of every day. If you're surrounded by people who think small, complain constantly, and protect their limitations, that's the identity you'll develop. Seek out environments where abundance is normal, where growth is expected, where your potential is challenged and celebrated. 6. Practice stewardship as if wealth already trusts you. How you handle what you have determines whether you'll be trusted with more. Stewardship isn't about how much you have. It's about how responsibly you manage what you have. Track your spending. Invest consistently. Give generously. 7th, give in proportion to the identity you aspire to, not the one you fear losing. Giving is the fastest way to reprogram your identity from scarcity to abundance. When you give, you're declaring to the universe that you have more than enough, that resources flow through you, that you trust in continuous provision. But give strategically, not emotionally. Give in ways that align with your values and vision, not your guilt or manipulation. Let me tell you what happens when your identity finally shifts from lack alignment to abundance alignment. It's not just about money, though money will flow differently. It's about everything. Your entire relationship with life transforms. Money stops hiding from you and starts flowing to you. Not because you're trying harder or wanting more, but because you've become someone who naturally attracts and retains resources. Your decisions become congruent with your destiny instead of contaminated by your history. You stop sabotaging opportunities because you're no longer afraid of success. People start recognizing something different about you. They see authority, confidence, and capability that wasn't there before. They bring you opportunities, partnerships, and possibilities because they trust you to handle them well. Resources seem to gravitate toward you because resources always flow to the most capable stewards. Blessings feel natural instead of overwhelming because your identity can finally contain them. You're no longer shocked by good fortune or suspicious of positive outcomes. You expect abundance because your identity is aligned with it. You become a vessel that God can trust with increasing levels of provision because He knows you won't be corrupted or destroyed by it. Your relationship with God deepens because you're finally receiving what He's been trying to give you all along. You realize that He wasn't withholding blessing from you. You were withholding yourself from blessing. You were protecting an identity that couldn't receive what love wanted to provide. But I know what some of you are thinking. You're generating objections, excuses, and reasons why this doesn't apply to your situation. Let me address the most common ones directly. But Rabbi Shimon, I don't earn enough to think abundantly. I'm barely making ends meet. This is exactly the thinking that keeps you barely making ends meet. Abundance isn't about your income. It's about your identity. You can have an abundant identity while earning minimum wage, and you can have a scarcity identity while earning 6 figures. Your income is a result of your identity, not the cause of it. But what if God is teaching me patience? What if I'm supposed to wait? God teaches through transformation, not through stagnation. If you're waiting without changing, you're not being patient. You're being passive. Patience is active trust combined with faithful preparation. If you're the same person this year that you were last year, you're not waiting for God's timing. You're avoiding God's transformation. But what if I'm just not chosen for abundance? What if some people are meant to struggle? This is the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself because it makes you a victim of divine favoritism instead of a participant in divine provision. Chosenness isn't random, it's responsive. God chooses to bless identities that can handle blessing. You become chosen by becoming capable. Here's your challenge, and I want you to take this seriously. I want you to identify one belief, one habit, one emotional loyalty that is protecting lack in your life. Just one. Maybe it's the belief that wealth corrupts. Maybe it's the habit of emotional spending. Maybe it's the loyalty to a story about your limitations that you've been telling for years. Identify it, name it, and commit to removing it this week, not next month, not when you feel ready. This week. Because every day you protect that limitation is another day you delay your inheritance. Every day you choose familiar struggle over unfamiliar abundance is another day heaven waits for you to become ready for what love wants to provide. Your soul is the blueprint. Your identity is the foundation. Your choices are the construction materials. And abundance is not a reward for good behavior. It's the natural result of becoming someone who can receive, steward, and multiply blessing without being destroyed by it. The question isn't whether you deserve abundance. The question is whether you're willing to become someone who can handle it. The question isn't whether God wants to bless you. The question is whether you're willing to let go of the identity that makes blessing impossible. Stop praying for abundance while protecting scarcity. Stop begging for breakthrough while clutching limitation. Stop asking heaven to change your circumstances while refusing to change your identity. Become someone worthy of what you're asking for. Not through suffering or sacrifice or spiritual performance, but through the deep transformational work of aligning your identity with your inheritance. Because when who you are matches what you're asking for, heaven doesn't delay. Heaven delivers. Your soul is the blueprint. Your life is the construction. Shalom, my friend. Now let's build the life God designed for you.